So we live in a world where there's so many different teachers and teachings and doctrines and philosophies and groups and denominations and different views and perspectives and interpretations. And then there's all these arguments and debates and I'm right, you're wrong, us first them mentality. And we've got the one and only truth and here's why. And then there's thousands of different groups and denominations and whatever belief structures that are all claiming to have this truth, yet the truth is contradicting itself among these different groups and philosophies and denominations. And it's like who the hell do I believe in? Who the hell do I trust? Because it's just so confusing. It's so hard if you're a truth seeker in this world to actually spend all your time and energy and focus into trying to learn externally what the truth is, because there's just so much information and there's so many different views and there's so many different doctrines, philosophies, interpretations, perspectives, ideas. There's so many different books. There's so many different commentaries and translations, and there's so much. It's so complex, and so it's confusing. It's difficult. Again, if you are a truth seeker, if you're looking for truth, yeah, you can spend time like learning a little bit about each one, but ultimately you have to make that decision. It's like, okay, who do I believe in? Who do I trust? And I know for me, a big part of my life has been going through that cycle, going through many different seasons of believing different things and listening to so many different teachers and reading so many different books and philosophies and doctrines, because I am someone that has always been very hungry for truth. But that hunger for truth has always been external. And here's what I've noticed throughout my life as I was going through these different seasons and phases of believing different things and listening to different teachers and being a part of different groups and belief structures and adhering to different doctrines and or following some different philosophy, whatever it was, what I noticed was it was always me trying to understand and trying to learn externally. I was always looking to a teacher or a teaching to fulfill that desire in me to know truth. And I can't tell you how many times I thought that I was there. I thought that I had found the truth in a particular teacher or doctrine or whatever it was. And maybe for some time I was convinced, I believed that that was it. But eventually, this would happen every single time. Eventually, something deep within my innermost being would start to say, yeah, but it's not exactly like this, or something's off. And it wasn't necessarily like a voice in my head. It was this impression. It was this inner knowing. It was intuition. And at the time, I didn't really know what intuition was because, again, for most of my life, I was so inclined and I was really trained. I was conditioned to only seek truth externally in a teacher, in a book, in a philosophy, in a list of rules and doctrines and creeds and commandments. Religion, it was always external, external, external. And a big part of my upbringing and my conditioning was I was taught that the worst thing I could do was to trust myself, because I was taught that I was inherently sinful and I didn't have any like inherent wisdom or inherent knowledge or some kind of divine truth within me. And so that wasn't even a question. I knew, or I thought growing up, that trusting myself or trying to like maybe get still and set all these books down and maybe meditate for a little bit and just see what happens, I knew that was completely out of the question. And so, or I thought that was out of the question, so I just wouldn't do it. I ignored it. But I got to a point where I said, I give up. I'm so tired of being so confused. It's exhausting. I don't know who to believe in. So I'm not going to read any books anymore for a season. I'm not going to listen to any teachers. I'm going to stop listening to the debates, to the arguments, to the us versus them mentality. I'm going to stop listening to sermons and lectures and all these different things I was into at the time. And I'm just going to meditate. I'm going to practice stillness and mindfulness. And I'm going to test this out and see if I can actually experience some kind of, I don't know, inherent wisdom or some kind of truth within me that I can't find externally. And guess what? When I started doing this, it didn't happen right away. But over time, as I learned how to get still, and as I learned how to be disciplined, to set aside the books, to set aside the teachings I was listening to, and to just sit and be and practice being and practice mindfulness and contemplative prayer, what happened was that it was amazing. I started to receive these ideas and these insights and this wisdom from within that really just came out of nowhere. And I was really perplexed by this at the time because I didn't know what was happening. All I knew was that when I got quiet, when I got out of my thinking mind, when I got out of my analytical mind, and I got still, and I started to listen to my heart, something magical happened. And I was experiencing this inner knowledge, this wisdom, this truth that was resonating with my being like nothing ever has before. Again, growing up, I would get involved with these different groups and philosophies and teachings, and it was cool. It was fine for a season, but even though I was convinced during those seasons that I had found the truth and I've got it all figured out, there was something within me, within the depths of my being, that just wasn't really fully resonating with it. There was something within me telling me that there's so much more. But now that I'm learning and I'm getting into this space of peace, of inner peace and stillness, and I'm learning to really trust my heart, listen to my heart, what's coming from my heart is illuminating my entire being. And so the word for that, like I said, is resonance. There was a deep resonance, a deep inner knowing that this is it. This is what I need to keep doing. And this, for me, is going to lead me along the way. And I find it fascinating. That's been what I've been doing for the past few years. And it's led me down this path that's been for me, that has brought me to a place of realization, of enlightenment. It's not that I've attained enlightenment, because I don't believe you can attain enlightenment. I think enlightenment is a realization that we are enlightened, and enlightenment is the truest nature of our being, and that we can trust ourselves. We can trust our true self, the depths of our innermost being. And one of the things I've discovered is that there's so much misunderstanding and misconception around the whole idea of intuition or trusting yourself or listening to your heart. Why? Because I think the confusion has been, we confuse the true self and the heart with the false self and the ego. And so I think so many people think that the ego, or the voice in their heads, or the thinking mind, is like the heart, or it's who we really are, when in reality it's not who we really are. Who we really are, the true self, is pure spirit, consciousness, divine, whatever you want to call it. And that's where the intuitive heart is. That is where we get that inherent wisdom. That is what it truly means to be divine. What it truly means to be divine is to understand that we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And that the body that we are experiencing life through in this incarnation is holy. In the Christian tradition, it's the body is the temple of the Spirit, the temple of God. And so when you understand that, then it's like, okay, now if my body is the temple of the divine, then I can use the body to access that divinity, and I can learn to live by that. And that's really what learning how to listen to your heart, learning how to listen to your intuition is all about. If we can understand that the heart, the physical heart, is intuitive, it has cells that can think and that can remember and that can know, and it's independent, it's different than the thinking and the knowing and the remembering that we have in the mind, in the headspace. That is where everything starts to change, because now my number one focus is being led by my heart, which is not evil, and it's not the ego. Again, we've got to make that clarification. What so many people are calling the heart or the self is the false self and the ego, and that's something that you should not follow. You should not trust your ego and your thinking mind and these different emotions and feelings that just arise and they come and go like clouds. That's not what I'm talking about. Behind all of that, behind it, there is the stillness of the intuitive heart. And that is where peace that surpasses all understanding, ego, intellectual thinking mind exists. It's in that space, in that heart space. And if you're not taught that you can trust that deep inner knowing, that deep impression, then you won't trust it. You'll ignore it. And over time, as you ignore it and as you learn to solely rely on all these different external sources and then what the thinking mind, the egoic mind is telling you, then that's what's going to create, I think, the most confusion. But the key is to practice meditation, practice mindfulness, learn how to get still, learn how to be still and know that I am God, that famous verse. And that's when you're going to start to experience, and that's when you're going to start to be able to decipher the difference between the heart space, the intuition, this inner knowledge that is giving you the wisdom and the truth and the knowledge that you're looking for, versus the egoic thinking mind, false self, that is just a mental construct that is formed in the early stages of life. And it's basically based around all these different identifications and attachments and labels that we are creating, the mind is creating, and then we just believe that that's who we really are. But it's not. We are something much more than that. So I think we have to get past that misconception. We have to get past that confusion and understand that we are divine, and that which is deepest within us is pure awareness, and it's pure love. And if we transcend the ego, we can absolutely trust and rely on what our heart is telling us. And we should follow our hearts. We should listen to it. We should be in tune with it. And that's what being divine is all about. It's reclaiming that inner authority. Because now I can go around and I can listen to whoever I want. But I'm allowing that intuitive heart, I'm allowing my intuition to be my guide, to be what leads me along the way during my spiritual path. We're all on different paths. We're all on different journeys. And that's another thing I think people forget. We are unique manifestations of God, of the divine. And with that uniqueness comes unique paths and purposes. And we all come to this earth, we all incarnate for different reasons. And you discover that reason, you discover that purpose by getting in tune, getting in touch with the intuitive heart, with your intuition. So, yeah, I think this is a lost art. I think this is something that needs to be talked about more. I think we need to be teaching others more. I don't think we need to be creating more followers. We need to be creating people who know how to trust themselves, how to live by their intuitive hearts so that they can be leaders and they can live out their fullest potential and they can express their divine nature uniquely at the highest level. I think about when Jesus said that, Jesus gave so much emphasis to his disciples on how he was about to leave them in the physical, but he talks about the spirit that would be with them when he left them, and that the spirit would guide them and lead them into all truth. And so we have that. We all have the spirit. We all have the divine within us, and that is what is supposed to be leading us and teaching us and guiding us throughout life. Do we need these external teachers and teachings and books and doctrines and philosophies? Well, here's the thing. I think that a true teacher is not someone who is telling us what to believe and telling us what to think and telling us what the one and only truth is, and then giving us like some kind of ultimatum or some kind of condition where if we don't believe in this truth that's being presented to us, then we're going to be punished in the afterlife or something like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I think a true teacher is not someone that is telling you and indoctrinating you. A true teacher is teaching you, watch this, how to discover truth for yourself, how to trust yourself, how to listen to your intuitive heart, how to transcend the ego, the false self, the thinking mind, and discover that beyond all that, there's this still small voice within, the spirit within, that's always been trying to teach us and guide us. That's what good teachers do. That's what we should be listening to. And so if we're reading a book or if we're listening to a teaching or a teacher that's teaching us how to go within and how to experience this divine nature that we have and how to trust our hearts and how to live by this intuitive guidance, then that's great. And that's what we need more of. We need more leaders who know how to trust themselves and they have the confidence and then they're teaching others. But as soon as we get into just really heavy on the indoctrination and telling people what to believe and telling people what to think, then we're missing it. That's only going to create more confusion, and that's not what we want. We want peace, and we want people to be liberated to reclaim their divine authority, their inner authority, and live out fully their divine potential, their unique divine potential, which can only be accessed and experienced by being guided by the intuitive heart, by going within and really knowing what that inner authority is like. That's where the true peace is. So that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you found it helpful, informative, or insightful, please leave a thumbs up at the bottom of the screen. And be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.